As we start Season 2 of our series, it opens with Hari shouting and arguing with himself, and then cuts to Gail and Salver as they continue with their conversation. Gail tells her about her life, and the next day, she reveals that she's imprisoned Hari within the Prime Radiant. She also shows Salver that the Prime Radiant has predicted a new, bigger crisis is coming, and if they don't stop it, then the dark period for humanity may never end. Hari is losing his mind in the Prime Radiant and trying to figure out how to escape. He talks to the Prime Radiant itself, which manifests itself as his late wife Kaylee, who happens to be a math professor. In Trantor, we see Day doing it with Demerzel, and then the two are attacked by masked men, and Day's protective shield has been tampered with, so their weapons actually hurt him. Day and Demerzel do manage to take out all the attackers, but Day gets heavily injured and is put into a healing tub. After hours in the tub, he is healed, and he's convinced that it was an inside job, so he kills his head of security on the spot and orders investigation on everyone. He then talks with Day and asks him if he and Dusk did this so he doesn't get married. And for the first time in the Empire's history, Day has decided to marry a woman and to also have a child, and this shows how much the Emperors have deviated from the original Cleon. All of them have different personalities, fears, and goals, and Dawn and Dusk are opposed to the marriage because it means that once he has a child, there won't be a need for a new clone, as his son will be the Emperor and the clone line will just disappear. Day has planned to marry a queen named Sareth, who hails from another powerful planet, and we see her arrive in Trantor with her entourage and her right-hand woman, Rue. Day has proposed to marry Sareth, but he has not fully accepted his proposal. Sareth is a very ambitious woman who plans to lead a great empire herself, and she also seems to not fear the empires. Day and Sareth exchange gifts, but before they could talk more, Demerzel interrupts Day and asks him to come with her. She then shows him a recording of a soldier asking for help after being attacked by the Anacreons 138 years ago. Demerzel informs the Emperors that Hari's foundation has been thriving for a century now, and that the outer planets have been joining forces and creating a strong army. Dusk then orders to attack Terminus, but Demerzel advises to wait and investigate more, and Day agrees with her assessment and orders for further investigation to why the Foundation has been quiet and to know exactly what they were planning. Back in Synax, Gail and Salver decide to leave the planet and go back to space before a massive storm destroys their raft. Salver's ship has been destroyed, so they jump deep into the water and jump-start it back to the surface. But the ship was still not functional to fly, then suddenly, Hari appears in the ship just as he's managed to escape from his prison. And the next thing we see is him confronting Gail. Just as Hari's released from the Prime Radiant, he shouts as Gail tells her that he was conscious for 138 years while she slept in her pod. He tells her that it was torture inside the Prime Radiant, and Gail apologizes and says that she didn't know that that would happen to him. She then tells him the plan has gone off course and that a new crisis is coming, and she also reveals to him that since Reich is dead, the Second Foundation doesn't exist. Hari wanted the Second Foundation because he knew that there would be a war between Trantor and the Foundation, and by creating a second secret foundation, he could still follow the plan. Hari also believes that if Terminus wins the war against the Emperors, they will also become as bad as the Emperors, which means that whatever happens, the Second Foundation is necessary. Gail then opens the Prime Radiant and shows Hari when the next crisis is coming, and they then remember that Gail has the ability to see the future, so she grabs the Prime Radiant and tries to see the crisis. This doesn't work, but she realizes that every time she's had a vision was when she was drowning, so she simulates that by sucking out all the oxygen in the room. She goes 150 years in the future, and the Empire has fallen, and she gets captured by a man that calls himself the Mule, and he starts choking Gail and asks her where the Second Foundation is, and he also asks her where Hober is before Gail gets back to the present. She tells the two what she saw, and she tells them that the Mule knew that she was from the past and was trying to get information about someone called Hober, and she also reveals that she was able to look inside of him and get the name Ignis, which is a planet, and they figure out that there must be an answer there and set course toward the planet. Back in Trantor, Queen Sareth and Rue join the Emperors for dinner, and Sareth asks Dawn what he feels about the marriage, and he tells her that he's glad to get a sister, but she asks him if she marries Day, he won't be king, and all three of them respond by saying that they're all one and the same person. Meanwhile, in Terminus, we see that their army has gotten stronger, and we also see that they've created a religion based on Hari, as they call him the Prophet, and the vault has recently also opened, so the leaders gather to visit it. The Warden approaches the vault to finally meet Hari, but Hari doesn't come out of it, and the Warden then gets close and asks to get into the vault so he can talk to Hari, but then starts to get lifted up into the sky before he utters the name Hober, and then he burns as he's in the air and dies on the spot. Back on the ship, Salver finds Gail crying, and she asks her what's going on, and Gail reveals that she went to the future, and she saw Salver dead beside her. Next we see Gail, Salver, and Hari arriving at Una, and Gail and Salver thought that they were going to Ignis, but Hari had changed the destination secretly. He explains to them that the Prime Radiant had told him to come to this place, and he and Gail then go to a specified location and walk up a mountain, and they find this closed gate which Gail tries to open. Nothing happens at first, but then the doors open and they see Kaylee on the other side, and Kaylee then teleports in Hari and closes the door on Gail. Meanwhile, in Terminus, a cleric named Polly knows Hober, who's actually a well-known scammer. Polly then travels to the planet Corel to find Hober with his disciple Constant, but as they arrive on the planet, they find that Hober has been captured and sentenced to death for trying to scam the ruler. Hober is put in for public execution, but on the last second, he escapes using a teleportation device and then tries to steal Polly's ship, but Constant and Polly capture him and they all escape from Corel. In Trantor, we follow Demerzel as she arrives at the capital prison, and she's there to free General Bell, who was put to prison because he didn't follow Day's order. Bell is a great general, so Demerzel convinced Day to give him a second chance and to send Bell to the outer planets so he can investigate the Foundation. Demerzel asks Bell to come with her, but he refuses, saying that he doesn't want to work for the person that sentenced him to that life, and Demerzel knows that Bell is not afraid of death, so she reveals that his husband Glay is actually alive, and she tells him that he was told Glay was dead as part of his punishment, and if he now comes back to work, he will get to see Glay again. Bell then meets Day and he's given his assignment. Then, as promised, he finds Glay waiting for him in the next room, and the two embrace each other for a short time, and then Bell gets cleaned up and wears his uniform. He then joins his fleet and gets a warm welcome from all his crew who missed him, and they then start the jump ship and set for the outer planets. Back in Una, we see Gail walking back to the ship and meeting up with Salver, and the two discuss what they should do and they decide to leave, but when Salver starts the ship, the floor breaks and they fall down a hole where they find mining robots coming for them. Salver manages to get out of the hole just before the robots crush them, and then rides the ship to leave the planet, but before they leave, they find a person's pulse on the ship's radar, and this shouldn't be possible as no human has lived on the planet, but Gail figures out that it's Hari. She then tells Salver to drive back to the mountain, and they arrive at a monument, and they find Hari knocked out but alive with human flesh, and they then see the robots coming for him, so Gail jumps down the ship and grabs him before he gets crushed. We then see her getting him back to the ship. Next we see Polly, Constant, and Hober arriving at Terminus. They go to the vault, which is still open, and find Director Cermak, who was apparently waiting for them, and Hober is then told to enter the vault, but he refuses when he sees the ash of the Warden, but suddenly he gets sucked into the vault and he disappears. Constant runs after him, then Polly and Cermak follow her, and they find Hober wandering around thirsty and hungry, and he tells them that he's been there for 2 years, showing them that time goes differently in the vault. They look around the vault and run into the library, and Hari then appears behind them and greets them. Hari then tells them that their next mission will be to stop the upcoming war between the Foundation and the Empire, and he orders Polly, Constant, and Cermak to go to Trantor and offer peace and friendship with the Empire. He explains that since the Empire has lost control of the outer planets, and 7 of the planets have joined the Foundation, they can use that as leverage to create peace. He then sends out the 3 of them and keeps Hober, and then tells him that he has a special mission for him, but it's not really revealed to us. Meanwhile, General Bell's fleet arrives outside the planet Shiwana, and Shiwana is a small farming planet with not much technology, so Bell and Glay land on the planet alone, disguised as locals. They look around for an informant named Ducium, but they lose the device that will let them jump back to their ship, so they track that first. They then find it captured by scavengers, and Bell and Glay at first try to get the device device back in peace, but when that doesn't work, they kill all the scavengers except for one, who runs away to get reinforcements. With little time left, they rush to the home of Deceit and meet with him, and he's been on the planet for decades and gathering evidence, and he shows them the region of the Foundation and reveals to them that the clerics use a reconstructed Emperor shield to show people magic and convince them to join the Foundation. He then tells them about a mysterious ship that the Foundation controls, and he tells them that he hasn't seen it before, but that people say that the Foundation doesn't even use jumpers to control the ship. The house alarm then goes off as dozens of people were approaching Deuceum's home, and he shows Belle a secret exit, but before they leave, he asks them to kill him. And he asks them that because he knows if they catch him, they're gonna torture him, and Belle then shoots him on the head, and he and Gail escape back to their ship. Back in Trantor, we see Sareth and Dawn go for a walk, and they get into this secluded area so they can talk in private, and Sareth asks him if Day killed her family so he would be able to marry her. Sareth was a low-level princess on her planet, but one day, everyone in her family died in a crash, which resulted in her becoming the queen. Sareth suspects that Day killed her family because no one else in her family would have agreed to marry him, and since she doesn't have any experience in leading, she would be easily convinced to marry him. Dawn tells her that he doesn't know if Day did that, but he tells her that it wouldn't be surprising if he did. Later that day, Sareth and Rue secretly meet up with an Empire guard named Markley, and they bribe him with money and tell him to find out if Day did really kill her family, and also to find out how Day survived the attack. We next see Hari dreaming about the day he instructed Wright to kill him, and we see him filled with guilt for letting Wright die, and he goes to the bathroom and cuts his hand to make sure that he's really back. The next morning, the three arrive at Ignis orbit, and they start their descent, but they're hit by an electromagnetic field which crashes their ship in the forest. Hari and Gail then go to repair the ship, and as Salver goes out to see who took them down, she follows some footsteps in the woods and catches a hooded man. She points his gun at him, but when he takes off his hood, it's revealed that he's Salver's boyfriend, Hugo. Salver is pretty confused as Hugo should have been dead a long time ago, but he explains that once she left Terminus, he also put himself in a status pod and linked it to hers so he could wake up the same time she did and be with her once again. The two then kiss each other and she brings him back to the ship, and Hari then sees them coming together and then shuts the ship's door on them as he's suspicious of Hugo and tells Salver that he's not gonna let her in with him. Salver then tries to explain that he's her boyfriend, but Hari doesn't budge. Gail then sees multiple people on the radar, but before she could warn Salver, the man disguised as Hugo changes back to his true self and grabs her, and his group then break into the ship and telepathically knock out all three of them. Meanwhile, in Trantor, Sareth decides to sleep with Day so she can see the bedroom and investigate what happened the night of the attack. Day had actually planned to create the perfect embryo in the lab, and because of that, they don't actually need to do it, but when he hears that she's offering, he invites her into his bedroom. The two then have a little foreplay, but Day quickly realizes that Sareth didn't really want to do it, and he then accuses her of trying to assassinate him, but she defends herself by saying that she wanted to make sure that Day can keep her safe. He then vows to catch the traitor and to keep her safe, and in the middle of a fight, they agree to get engaged. He then kicks her out of his bedroom and meets up with Demerzel, and when he tells her what happened, she tells him not to worry about Sareth's family and their deaths being linked to him, and it's revealed to us that he did in fact actually kill all her family. Sareth then goes back to Rue without new information and the news of the engagement, but Markley has found a memory footage of one of the doctors, and he plays the tape for them, and they see Demerzel with her human flesh removed, and this is shocking as AI is thought to be eliminated from the galaxy, but Cleon had kept one for himself. Back on Ignis, Hari, Gail, and Salver wake up in what they thought was a prison, but they find the door open, and they follow the road to find a community of telepaths led by a woman named Tellum. And Tellum explains the reason she ambushed them was because she didn't know if they were a threat, and she then tells Salver and Gail that they have some kind of telepathic powers as well, and that was the reason they were drawn to the planet. She then apologizes for tricking Salver and tells them to rest till the next day, and then after they leave, she tells her men to find the Prime Radiant as she plans to destroy it and stop the Second Foundation from being formed. We next see Salver waking up after her bad dreams, and since Salver is now a mentalic, meaning that she's a telepath, she can feel and see other telepaths' mind, and she sees the people getting hunted by other people, and she sees the fear and the pain that they experienced, and then she witnesses Tellum saving all of them and bringing them to Ignis. In the morning, Salver, Hari, and Gail meet with Tellum, and she tells her about Gail's vision and informs her that a telepath named Mule will rise up and destroy what she built for her people. go. Later that day, Tella meets up with Gail in private and tells her that she's smarter and more powerful than she realizes, and she then proposes to train her and make her the leader of the people and to stop the rise of Mule, thus stopping Salver's death. But this offer comes with one request of her own, and that is that Hari will not be allowed to stay on the planet. Meanwhile, in Trantor, Day gathers his citizens in the city and introduces his bride-to-be Sareth, and then announces that he's ending the genetic dynasty. And here we see the fear on the faces of Dusk and Dawn. Sareth then gives a passionate speech to the people and vows to serve them totally, upstaging Day and showing him that she won't be just a background character. At the same time, we see Polly and Constant arrive at Trantor and they announce themselves to be from the Foundation, and they're given a visitor's pass, but later that night, they're captured by the Empire's guards and put into custody. Back on Ignis, Gail and Thalum meet up with Salver and Hari, and Gail informs him about the deal, but he tells her that Thalum is controlling her, and we then see Hari getting dizzy from Thalum's power, and he immediately stops arguing and leaves the area. Salver follows him and asks him what's wrong, but he tells her to just hide the Prime Radiant from Thalum. Salver, confused, comes back to meet with Gail, but as the two were talking, they hear their ship getting started, and they then go outside and see Hari starting the ship and driving away. We then cut to the real Hari, who was tied down in a lake, as Thalum had captured him once he figured out that she was after the Prime Radiant and plans to kill him. She tells him that she only cares about saving her own kind and reveals her plan to train Gail to be her successor and stop the Second Foundation. She then orders Hari to be killed by drowning, and as he was drowning, we're just taken back to a flashback to when Hari was a scientist on his home planet, and he was just starting to create the Prime Radiant and also psychohistory. And when he started to do that, his boss was a little concerned, and we then see him meeting his late wife Yana, who was also a scientist, and we see them fall in love and her revealing being pregnant, and their life was going great, and they also managed to create a prototype of the Prime Radiant. One day, Yana walks into Hari's office as he was arguing with his boss, and Hari and Yana have been offered a job in Trantor as professors, but Hari knows that the Empire is just trying to spy on them, so he hides the prototype and refuses to go to Trantor. A few days pass with nothing new, but his boss, who was tasked on finding the Prime Radiant, abducts Yana and accidentally kills her, and Hari realizes that Yana is dead when a necklace that she gave him starts to blink. This is when we see Hari change as he becomes angry and takes revenge by killing his boss, and then he goes to Trantor on his own and starts his plan for the Foundation. When we come back to the present, we see Hari getting close to death, and we see him getting fully engulfed in the water. Next we see Day and Demerzel discussing what they're gonna do with Polly and Constant, and they then begin to talk about the upcoming marriage, and Demerzel asks him if he's having second thoughts, and we see that he's scared about making this decision and stopping the genetic dynasty, but he still decides to get Sareth ready for the marriage. Demerzel then takes Sareth to the lab for inspection, and to make sure that her eggs are fertile, Sareth passes the initial test, but demands the rest to be done on a later date. Demerzel then tells everyone to get out, and when the two were in private, she reveals to Sareth that she's the one that killed her family, and threatens to do the same to her and her loved ones if she ever misbehaves again. Meanwhile, Hober has reached his location, which is a mothership for spacers, who are actually genetically modified humans whose main job is to operate jump ships. He's captured by their leader, but he offers them some Opalesk, which is this drug that keeps the spacers alive, and he tells them that the Foundation have found a way to make it, and that if the spacers join them, they can have as much of it as they want, and this would finally free them from the control of the Empire. But the leader was not ready to betray the Empire yet, and she immediately brings him to the orbit of Trantor, and she tells General Bell what happened, and Bell has been looking for the Whisper ship which Hober was using, so he forces him to open it, but what they didn't know was, the ship had a protector which attacks them, and Hober manages to escape. Day is then shown the footage, and he finally brings Polly and Constant to the palace, and Polly then offers peace and asks for recognition from the Empire. Day was not impressed by his offer and refuses, but then a hologram of Hari appears in front of Constant, and apparently Hari had implanted a chip on Constant's head, and he did this when they met, and he now presents himself in front of Day. He gives Day the same offer and smugly argues that if the war happens, the Foundation will win, and Day then reveals his plan to end the genetic dynasty before destroying Hari's chip. Meanwhile, Sareth meets with Dawn in private, and she tells him that Day killed her parents, and then offers her eggs to him, and she tells him that he should fertilize them, and since his DNA is identical to Day, nobody would actually know, and Dawn tells her that this is actually killing himself and fears that Day will kill him if he finds out, but she convinces him with a good kiss. Back on Ignis, Salber has been feeling weird about the whole situation, and she then hears Lober lying about it, so she comes later alone and checks the boat's history for its last location. She finds the location has been erased, but she also finds a recovery of the navigation, but Gail arrives just in time to stop her from stealing the boat. She tells Salver that even if she doesn't trust the people, she should trust her, and she goes on to tell her to not do something that will get her in trouble and takes her back to their room. Later that night, Salver sneaks out and she drives the boat to its last location, and she finds Hari's body in the water, but when she tries to untie him, Thalym arrives behind her and she tells Salver that she shouldn't have done this, and we see her knocking her out and Salver starts to drown. Next we see Rue going through Demerzel's stuff, but she's caught by Dusk, and she tells him that Demerzel has threatened Sareth, and he agrees to investigate more with her. In the morning, Day broadcasts a special program to the whole galaxy, and he sentenced Polly and Constant to death, and he's making everyone witness it to instill fear into their hearts. He first gives a speech about what the Foundation is planning to do, and he then asks Sarah to choose who dies first, but she refuses to answer. He then chooses to kill Constant first, but she starts praying, then suddenly, Hober's ship arrives out of nowhere and creates a distraction, and Hober then grabs Constant and jumps back into the ship, but Polly is still captured by the Empire. Everyone was slightly hurt from the jump, and Dusk asks Day to wage war against the Foundation, but Day says that he actually wants them and decides to go to Terminus, and he puts Dawn in charge as he's gone and takes Demerzel with him. Meanwhile, Hober and Constant make it to a safe space, and Constant then proposes that they do it, which catches Hober off guard, but he accepts. And after their somewhat awkward lovemaking, Hober gets up to get some wine, but he finds out that his ship is surrounded and disabled by General Bell's fleet. Back in Ignis, Gail was looking for Salver, and she asks Tellum where Salver is, and Tellum tells her that she had to put her in prison because she found out that she killed Hari. Gail then finds herself in prison, where there were special materials blocking her from using her powers. A little kid named Joshua sees this happen, and he runs to Salver's prison and informs her of what's happening, and he also tells her that Gail is going to be sacrificed for a ritual. Salver then takes out the Prime Radiant that she was hiding and uses it to get into the vault, and she finds Hari in his vault and tells him about Gail and the other Hari, and the vault Hari was never supposed to know about, which makes him realize that he's just a distraction to keep the Foundation motivated, while the main Hari creates his Foundation. He decides to help Salver by telling her how to disable the devices, and she uses that to escape the prison. Meanwhile, Gail is brought for the ritual, and Tellum explains that every few decades she finds special girls and takes their powers so she can become more powerful and be immortal. Tellum then starts the ritual as Gail struggles to escape. Back on Trantor, Rue and Dusk continue their investigation, and they find a secret room within the palace, and when they get inside, they find a hologram of the first Cleon kept inside the room. At the same time, Dawn and Sareth meet in secret and discuss what they should do, and Sareth realizes that the Emperors might not really be in power, and instead, Demerzel is actually the true Empress of Cleon, as she is the one that clones them and raises them, and maybe even erase their memories so they don't remember certain things. We then see the story of the first Cleon, and we see him as a young kid roaming around the palace. One day, he accidentally finds the hidden room and finds Demerzel in a prison, and throughout the year, she tells him stories about herself and the times before him, and Demerzel was 18,000 years old at the time, so she had a lot of stories to tell. They got closer as the years went by, but Cleon never really had the courage to release her until he became very old with no child to take the throne. He then finally releases her and puts a chip in her that makes her loyal to him. He then instructs her to clone him and erase the clone's memories so that they wouldn't know anything about this. Back in the present time, the Cleon hologram finishes telling them the story, and he then locks them in the prison and notifies Demerzel. Day and Demerzel have arrived at the Terminus orbit as he planned, and Day decides to go down to the planet and talk to the people, and he tells General Bell to wait for his orders to attack and goes down with Demerzel. They meet with Director Cermak, and Day finally decides to visit the church, and he sees the church as a disguise for a factory to make weapons, which really pisses him off, and he then stabs Cermak and orders his soldiers to kill everyone in the church. He then makes his way to Hari's vault, vault, and he's let in by Hari, and Day gives Hari one chance to stop the war, and he tells him to denounce his math and declare psychohistory false. But Hari tells him that he can't do that as his math is correct. Day then gets impatient and he orders General Bell to attack the Invictus, and Glay with the elite teams then take a ship and start attacking the Invictus. The crew on the Invictus tries to fight back using the modified ship, but they were no match for the highly trained and powerful Empire armies. Glay takes out their defenses, but on his way back to his ship, he's hit and he falls down to the planet. Meanwhile, Salver gets to the ritual just before Gail was finally taken over by Telem and disrupts the ritual using the blocking devices, and the two then manage to escape back to their ship, but Telem was already waiting for them, and Gail then fights her off while Salver fights and kills Lober. She then goes to help Gail, but Telem was too powerful for the both of them, and Telem then goes to stab them, but Hari appears behind her and bashes in her head and kills her. Back on Terminus, Day returns back to his ship shortly after and orders Bell to crash the Invictus on Terminus. Bell and Glay then say their final goodbyes, filled with tears, before Bell shoots down the Invictus and drives it to Terminus, and Terminus is crushed and engulfed with fire. We next see Gail explaining to Salver that she actually saved Hari from drowning using her telepathic powers, and she then disguised another guard as Hari, and she hid the real Hari until they got time to escape. The people on Ignis, now free from Telem's mind control, celebrate Gail, and the three are then invited for celebration and food, which everyone attends, and we see everyone happy as they share stories, but then Joshua, who is still getting controlled by Telem, grabs a gun and shoots at Gail, but Salver jumps in and takes the shot, which wounds her fatally. Gail then grabs Salver and tries to cover her wound, but to no avail, and Salver dies on Gail's hands. Demerzel has gone to Trantor alone because of the signal that she received, and she finds Dusk and Rue in the prison. And after now knowing the story, Dusk offers to truly free her by removing the chip, but she informs him that if he tries anything, her program will make her kill him, and she then reveals that she was the one that sent the assassins to stop the marriage. She then informs them that she's gonna frame Sareth for the assassination attempt and restore the genetic dynasty. Dusk then gives her a last kiss before she kills both of them, and meanwhile in the Empress fleet, we see the destroyed Terminus, but Day is not satisfied, so he orders Bell to jump to the other 7 planets and destroy them as well, and this was too much for Bell and he refuses the order. Day then directly takes charge and orders the Spacer to jump, but when the Spacer stops the jump mid-space, it would destroy the ship and everyone inside it. Hober then reveals that the Spacers did agree with his proposal, and he reveals to Day that Hari baited him to a war so Day would bring his biggest fleet and it gets destroyed. An angry Day then starts beating up Hober, but Bell joins the fight, and after an intense fistfight, Bell wins and manages to kill Day. He and Hober then take Constant to an escape pod, and they release her to space, hoping that she could find refuge somewhere. Hober and Bell then go to the ship's command room and drink wine as the ship blows up. We then see Constant drifting through space, but she doesn't stay long as her pod stops in front of the vault. She's then sucked into the vault and finds Polly there, and Hari then shows himself and reveals that he'd put all the people of Terminus in his vault, saving everybody's life. Back in Terminus, Demerzel hears the news about Day's death, and she then orders to get Sareth, but Dawn has already grabbed her, and they've escaped the planet. Demerzel then goes back to the cloning lab and releases another Dawn, Day, and Dusk, and she first checks if their memory's working properly, and then opens the Prime Radiant that she took from Day, and tells them that something great is coming. Back on Ignis, Hari and Gail have a funeral for Salver, and the two then discuss their next plan, and they decide to both go back to Stasis Pod and wait for 150 years. They are then put into the Stasis Pod by the Ignis people, and they fall asleep, and we are taken to 152 years into the future, and we see the mule frightened by Gail, and the season ends as he decides to find and kill Gail before she finds him.